adventure. You're on Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with our next guest. I got to tell the story about this, though, because I was really excited, because there's like a couple albums are like my favorite albums out there, and bands are my favorite bands I like listen to all the time. And so the publicist sends me over information about this new album, and I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. I will definitely interview them because, you know, you get all kinds of requests all the time. And it's like some of them, you know, some of them you don't. But this band and this artist we have here, absolutely freaking incredible. I've been listening to them since the 80s. And so I'd like to welcome to the show Todd Michael Hall from Riot V. How are you?
Hey, man. Thank you very much, Pipe Man. I appreciate it. It's just a real pleasure to be with you here today.
Oh, pleasure to have you. And for the old school fans, okay, I know it's interesting, like you came up with the 5 part because isn't it like the first time there's been like 5 people in the band?
No, actually, it's considered the 5th chapter of the band because.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yep, there's been a lot of there's been 5 different singers that have recorded with Riot. So you had the initial guy, Guy Speranza, and then they transitioned after the 3rd album into Rhett Forrester. And then they transitioned into kind of more of a power metal style, and they brought on Tony Moore for the Thundersteel album and Privilege of Power. And then after that, there was Mike DeMeo for quite a few albums. And then they did have a Thundersteel reunion. So they put out an album in 2011 with Tony Moore and all the original Thundersteel guys. And then Mark Reale passed away about a year after that in 2012. And that's when I wasn't technically in the band yet. I was kind of in the process of getting in the band as they were forming kind of regrouping. And that's when, out of respect for Mark Reale, Donnie, and Mike, decided to add the V, which a lot of people will say Riot V, but it's really Riot 5 is what we call it. And that's when they decided I respect him, just to kind of signify a new chapter for the band. But really, realistically, people know us as Riot. When we're out and people are chanting our name or whatever at a show, it's usually just Riot, you know.
Right.
And Riot 5, you know. So.
That's so cool. And, you know, one thing I will say, too, is so I'm listening to new music. You got the new album dropping on the 12th, Mean Streets. And it's always tough when when you listen to bands for a long time, whether they had change-ups or not, especially if you're an old school OG fan, to kind of like the stuff that's 30 years later, you know? Oh, yeah. But I got to tell you, I mean, this music you have now is absolutely amazing. It's like, I don't know. It's like old school and new school all put into one with a great flavor to it.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's definitely something that we're going for. I mean, you know, we really have 2 principal writers of music on the album. That's Donnie, the bass player, and then Mike, the guitar player. And I tend to write a lot of the lyrics, and we all work together on the vocal melodies. And, Donnie has actually met Mark Reale way back in the early 80s. And then, back then they were just friends. They would jam together when Mark was visiting Texas. And that's how they met. And then, later on, Donnie ended up getting in the band, and Thundersteel was the first album that he was on, and he was a principal writer on that. And so because of that, we kind of considered, because Thundersteel is really that transition to what I would call power metal, bringing in that side of it, even though Riot's always been pretty diverse, obviously. and so Donnie definitely has that in spades. But Donnie grew up as a big fan of Riot, so he loves all from the first album on. He said it used to be on the radio when he was a kid, younger kid in San Antonio. And so like when he first met Mark, it was like meeting one of his heroes.
Right.
So definitely and then Mike's obviously been in the band since '89, so he's got a ton of history and experience with the band and with Mark Reale and everything. And I think if you look at the history of Riot, it's pretty, even when you've got an album like Privilege of Power that has tons of heavy songs on it, like On Your Knees and Black Leather and Glittering Steel, you still have a song like Marianne, which is more like a pop hit kind of thing. So there's definitely some diversity there. And that's what we wanted to have, kind of just some diversity. And certainly when you're in what I would call a legacy band like Riot, you want to try and have some winks to the past here and there. And like, the title of the album is Mean Streets, and Donnie wrote a song called Johnny's Back. And so pretty much every album, Donnie wants to have a Johnny type saga song. And so like Mean Streets is more of the continuation of that Johnny saga on this new album. So
nice. Hey, okay, you were talking about power metal. I have a trivia question for you.
Oh boy.
What thrash metal band was originally considered power metal because there was no such thing as thrash metal yet?
I don't like Exciter or somebody like that. That'd be my guess.
Close. So I'll tell you a story to answer it. I went to this band's first show ever in LA, and this dude gets off the stage after a show. I think I was like 15 years old. And he starts talking to me, and then he gives me his business card, and it said Metallica Power Metal.
Oh, wow.
Dave Mustaine.
Oh, wow.
Right? And it's like, I think about it, and like, why were they power metal? Because they didn't sound power metal.
Yeah,
but,
sound
it's like, it's almost like power metal was sometimes a genre that was given to bands that you didn't know what genre to put them in of metal.
Yeah, and it's so hard. I mean, there's so many darn different names for metal. I think for me, when I think of power metal, in my mind, power metal is it can be fast and heavy for sure, but it usually is melodic and has kind of soaring vocals. So that to me is kind of the definition of. So I would think of like say Iron Maiden or Dio or Queensryche at times, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's no way that like Hit the Lights is power metal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely metal, but not the soaring vocals, at least not so much.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about this new album. What's the creativity behind it? And, I have another question because I have the album cover behind me. Maybe you could tell people the story about why you have the animal on the album cover.
Well, I mean, so I have to tell you through hearsay, but I do know, I mean, I was about 8 years old when the first album came out in 1977. And I do remember way back then that there was a lot of talk about baby seals getting clubbed and killed for their fur, and people were up in arms and upset about it happening and all that. And so if you look at the very first album that was released in 77, Rock City, there was the artist that had made the cover. I have to believe that was what was on his mind, because if you look at the cover, it is a guy with a baby seal head holding an axe. There's like a dead body behind him and a city in flames behind him. And so my interpretation is that that's basically the baby seal getting back at man.
I love it.
And when that happened, I think it was so, I don't know, back then that, I think it was so outrageous. So when they came out with the next album, Narita, they had they had a sumo wrestler with a seal head. And then when they came out with the third album, Fire Down Under, it was just a close up of a seal guy with a seal head and fire behind him. So, they kept sticking with it. And actually they did have albums where they didn't, but I mean, really, I think Born in America had it on there, and Restless Breed, he was half seal, and so it's just been around for so long. And in some ways, some people have teased kind of Riot, and says, without those, those terrible album covers, and whatnot have you. maybe it'd have been more famous if the album covers weren't so crappy. And I think, but for us, we've kind of come full circle, just kind of like we totally embrace it. So when we came out with Unleash the Fire, because they didn't have the seal on the one on Immortal Soul. But when we came out with it, Donnie wanted to bring it back, but he thought maybe bring him into the future, make him somewhat of a cyborg or whatever. And and then the last album, Armor of Light, that's where we introduced the notion of a gang. And so there's multiples, of them. And we continued the gang. This time it's a biker gang of SEALs. So
I love it. You know why I asked that? Because it's very interesting. Like, I have all those old albums still to this day. And it wasn't till looking at this album and reading something that I ever put together that was what was always on the albums. It didn't even register in my mind that those albums had the same kind of character in it, which is really weird. I remember the album covers in my head, but I never thought of it that way until this one. I'm like, holy crap. Like, how did I not notice that?
That's funny.
Right? So, and this album cover is badass too, by the way. I miss that nowadays, of like really enjoying the artwork of an album cover, and this one definitely does it for me. But let's talk about the music, So tell us a little bit about what prompted this album, what kind of creativity went into it, and what you really wanted to accomplish with the music.
I think, some bands, when they sit back, they maybe try to go for an overall concept with it. We tend to be more like we like to write great songs. And so the creative process is pretty interactive. I mean, Donnie's a principal songwriter, so is Mike. Donnie usually sends a pretty developed song and then a demo, and a lot of times he'll send it to me and I can listen and try to write lyrics and vocal melodies. Mike will do the same thing. Sometimes Donnie will write his own lyrics and vocal melodies, but we interact. We'll even have arguments now and then. Like there's the song High Noon that was like the first single they released. Actually, I called it First Light, and the chorus was like "Showdown at First Light," da, 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 whatever. That was my chorus, and I was like, I like my chorus better than this High Noon chorus. And so like we went back to Mike. I was like, Mike, come on, man. I got him and Donnie on the phone. I'm like, Mike, come on, listen to them both, man. Isn't mine's better, isn't it? And he's like, nah, I like Donnie's. So Donnie's ended up winning out. So every now and then you have those little contests, and I'm still convinced my chorus is better, but I like High Noon too. So so there is that interactive process. And then there's other times where you look at a song like Lean Into It, which is kind of what I would call, it has a real good kind of old school throwback vibe. Sounds like something off of Rock City to me. And but Donnie sent me the music, and it was just really sang to me. And I sent it back to him with lyrics and vocal melodies, and it was like, boom, there we go. So sometimes they just go really fast, and then other ones, they're just a labor of love. And so for us, it just comes down to the songs. We just want a great song. We're kind of beyond the notion of, well, we want to impress somebody with high screams or fast solos or whatever. It's like, we just want to write a great song. That's all.
Well, you know what? I think that's something that's missing nowadays, because especially in the metal genre, as a lifelong metalhead, I find myself sometimes saying things now that people said to me that wasn't true back then, but it's like, every metal band sounds exactly the same. And I used to say, no, they didn't. But now I see certain bands, it's almost like they use this algebraic equation to make a metal song. And the musicianship is kind of not necessarily always there, whereas back in the day, it was about musicianship. So I love that bands like you guys are like bringing that back, because it is coming back, where it's important to be a good musician and to have a good song, not just, here, let's just put this out like we're in a puppy mill.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. It is really tough. There's that fine balance, to some extent. It's like, your fans, you're kind of in a box with your fans, right? Like they kind of know what you are, and they want to feel like they know what to expect from you. The nice thing about Riot is with with a long history, there's been some diversity, and so I think, our fans are there. But I think for us, we think about the people, and we want to have a little bit of everything for them. So we always have some pounders, we call them, the ones that got the real fast, heavy double bass and all that. We like to have some old school, and we like to have Donnie says we have two types of songs. We have up and down, which is and then we have the left and right, which is da da da, or whatever. So you always have a little bit of that, So like Field of Fire has a little bit more of that, just kind of old, maybe Judas Priest vibe, where it's just kind of heavy and but more mid tempo and stuff. So I think for us that was it. Just try to mix it up and kind of, as you're writing, don't limit yourself. Well, I can only write this or I can only write that. It was like, but there's always some extra songs that you don't end up using and stuff where you're like, maybe that's not good for us. Whatever, we won't do that.
I always say that's the key to being a great artist. It's not like thinking about it. It's just what comes to you. It's like, I remember being in high school and I was playing guitar and my dad would be like, you should give that up because you suck. And what I was really doing is I was just like experimenting with these different sounds. So like I wanted to see what I could come up with, not do something that everybody else was doing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, it's hard because with a band like Riot, with our long legacy of albums, and it's the 17th album, and there's that fine line. You want to come out with something that's in the spirit of the band, but doesn't sound like it's the exact same thing over again. And it can be hard. I mean, we try to be successful, but it's definitely hard to do. So
I always say that too. Like, my hat's off to you, because when you have that many albums out or you've been a musician for that long, I always think, man, how hard is it to come up with new songs that people are going to like because they want you to do all the same old stuff, but as an evolved musician that, has been learning the trade, you want to do new things and not do the same thing you've done your whole life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I feel really blessed to be in the band because, first of all, I mean, there's been different singers and my voice just fits the pocket of certainly Guy Speranza and Tony Moore tend to be the ones that we play the most songs from, and then obviously our own songs, and it just fits my vocal pocket really well. So in that regard, I feel blessed, but and the opportunities, all the shows I've gotten to play, but also just the fact that we have people that, like, when we went to South America, even back in 2016, there were people singing, Take Me Back, which is a song I wrote on Unleash the Fire. I wrote the lyrics to that. And it's pretty overwhelming, like, because some bands, like the legacy bands, they can only play the old stuff. No one even, they won't even put out new albums because nobody cares to hear it or something. And I think with ours, we have fans that expect new songs and want to hear the new songs, and they sing along with the new songs too, and that's where I feel really blessed, because it's like, I feel like we're still pushing the thing forward. We're not just out schlepping the old stuff,
I love that. It's almost like the attitude of your fans are the old school underground type of fans, like it doesn't matter what you put out as long as it's good, and they don't need you to be just this. And please play this song that you've played 50 million times because that's the only one I want to hear,
Yeah, it's amazing. We do have some really incredible fans. I mean, I remember playing shows. I mean, like on quite a few occasions, I mean, like 3, 4, at least occasions, I've had grown men come up to me and tell me that they were crying as we played Blood Streets, which is a song off Thundersteel, because it brought back all these emotions of when they were a kid, and they just thought that we sounded so true to the original, that they just loved it. And like, that's for me. I mean, as a vocalist, vocalists have different theories of how they want to do stuff. Like for me, when I do the older stuff, my goal is to try to have it sound as much like the original as I can. I don't change the melodies around and do anything. I just try to do it exactly, because to me, that's what and love, like, and I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it. I mean, some people prefer to change stuff up. I went to see Counting Crows in concert, and Adam changes the melodies all the time. I didn't even know what songs he was playing half the time until all the words, but that's not my thing. I don't work that way. So
I like your way, actually, because you can be your own on your new songs, but then you give that nostalgic vibe at the same time with the old songs. So I love it.
Yeah,
tell everybody how they can connect to you guys on socials, on the web, how they can get the new album when it drops. They definitely have to check out the video that's out for Feel the Fire, because that's badass. Not just the music, but the video itself is cool as hell. And every way that they can check everything out, I'm sure they can pre-order or pre-save. I know there's multiple colors of vinyl and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, we're on the social media. So Facebook, you'll find us under Riot, and you'll find us on Instagram. I'm not even sure what that one is, but if you look up Riot, I'm sure you'll find us. You know, our webpage is areyoureadytoriot.com. So if you go there, you're going to find links to pre-order the album. It's also, you know, you'll see it on Amazon and all over. We're on Atomic Fire, the record label, so they've got their own site. So yeah, there's sites all over the place, right? That you can go connect with it. And we have just a lot of great stuff. The site, we have another, I think Mean Streets will be the next video that we're going to release in a little while. And then we'll even have a lyric video for Love Beyond the Grave, I think, when the album drops. And so it comes out April 12th. And so we're just hoping everybody picks it up and enjoys it.
And as a Jersey boy, I love that you shot the new the video in Jersey. So I'm going to say that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we definitely did. Yeah, we got some scenes of us walking around. I think the second one was in New York, but Feel the Fire was definitely in Jersey, in a little studio in Jersey. And I think the gal in it, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she was Miss Jersey.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I'm forgetting her name, but she was a real nice gal, obviously. But Donnie sent me a picture of this Miss New Jersey, and I'm like, well, who's that? And she goes, that's the one in our video. And I'm like, really? So,
wow, that's cool. You have any final words you want to leave our listeners with that we haven't covered that maybe they need to know or look out for?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for, first of all, doing the interview, and just thank all the people that support us. I mean, this is like a passion project for us. It's something that, obviously, I have a full-time job like most everyone. This is something that we do for fun, and it's been great for us because we get to play shows all over the world and stuff. But we go because the people are there, and they want us to come, and they want us to play shows, and they want us to put out more music, and just appreciate the support that people give us. And thank you, and we'll keep giving you. If you want it, we'll keep coming. So
we want more for sure. Thanks for giving us more music all these years later, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
All right, man. Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Hey, this is Todd Michael Hall from Riot V, and you are listening to The Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Thank you for listening to The Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.